Carl bought me this robe recently, and I love it. Love it. And you know, these things like this cozy, yawning, relaxing. I know many of us get messages that that's not okay as often. And I want you to try and remember this cozy robe this week and think about, what is your cozy robe? What is it that makes you feel relaxed and held and safe to be vulnerable, to rest, to yawn? I know there was a Mythbusters that talked about yawning being contagious, and I can't remember if they found out it was wrong or not, but I think it's contagious. You know, resistance as rest seems counterintuitive, yet there's a power in resting because we're human. You know, it's amazingly, even though we interface with all of this technology and we've made it into outer space and we have this telescope and, you know, satellites going far, far into the deeper reaches of space, and we know so much, there's AI, we are still living, breathing humans that need rest, that need play. We need balance in our lives. And I think our society, our culture tells us that the more we can produce, the more successful we are. What's the first thing that you hear when you meet someone besides hi? What do you do? It can be, what do you do? Where'd you go to school? What do your children do? What do your grandchildren do? Whatever. It's always about doing. And, you know, I would love to hear if somebody said, how do you, I guess you wouldn't say, how do you be? How do you affect your being? Beingness. And I don't know if you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh, but Winnie the Pooh is a great resistor. Right? Everybody, Tigger's always bouncing around, telling Pooh to do stuff, and Tigger's like, no, I gotta go get my honey. But I'm only gonna go after I sit here for a while and put my hand in the jar, put the honey in my mouth, and then I'm gonna look at you and wait. And Tigger's like, no, gotta go. And no, we'll go after lunch. And sometimes embracing that inner Pooh can be very healing. And there are times, of course, where Tigger is a little helpful too. And so I think if we can somehow notice when our body is tired and give ourselves permission to notice it and maybe take a break. I don't know. Take a little 15-minute nap. And that's not always easy when you're in the middle of a work day or trying to take care of children or operating heavy machinery, not a good idea. But I think if we could find this to be more normative in our culture, that it is okay to rest, that we don't have to hustle, as Aaron was sharing with us, and especially people of color, people who are at the margins in our society. Also, you know, people who struggle to make ends meet, people who are LGBTQ+, all of the ways in which identities intersect to make it harder to succeed. Even more so, Tricia Hersey, as a woman of color, wrote, we need to rest. Resting, dreaming of futures where we fight oppression by valuing the personhood of every human being. And the Nap Bishop, as she's called, which I love, she cast a light on our troubled relationship with rest and how to imagine or dream a future where rest is exalted. Our worth not residing in what we produce, and especially not a system that exploits us and dehumanizes us. When I was a stockbroker, I worked easily 60, 80 hours a week, and I was having a really good time. But it was a culture where the more you did, the more powerful you seemed. You didn't show vulnerability. You had to be fast and smart and train and do. And Yeah, it was really toxic. Carl and I had been trying to have a child during that time. I did not have a child during that time. My body was like, no way, no way. And I was exhausted. And when I actually left being in the financial world to become a massage therapist, which is a turnaround. But when I got my first office with a chiropractor, I slept for hours. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm just resting." I'm just resting. I'm tired, really tired. And, when we think about all the things that people go through, and really, really hard situations and hard financial circumstances, it sounds like privilege to say, don't hustle. And that is a privilege to not have to have 3 or 4 jobs to make ends meet. But if people of privilege or people who vote can create a society where we have greater societal supports for like new parents, or societal supports for when you're sick, or safety nets, that people of every circumstance have the right to rest, have the right to take a vacation. I hear from people who say, I've never taken a vacation outside of this state ever because it's too much. It's too, I can't take time off, I can't afford it. And our society just has too much disparity. Rest is Resistance was written by Reverend Tricia Hersey. In A Spiritual Energy, she centered it in Black liberation, womanism, and Afrofuturism, with captivating storytelling and practical advice, all delivered in her lyrical voice and her performance art. This is a fantastic book. It is really blunt. It is really blunt. As you heard one of the readings, it calls it like it is, that we live in an unjust system. How do we shake up notions that rest is laziness or that our worth is tied to our bank accounts? And I love this question that she asked: what would it be like to live in a well-rested world? I don't know. I don't know what that would be like, but I kind of feel like it'd be like a Disney movie. People would be singing and more patient with each other, maybe less fighting. I don't know. I'm someone who struggles with rest, and I have chronic insomnia, and some of it probably happens because of my busy mind. Some of it happens because of arthritis at night, and some of it might be because I'm a woman of a certain age. I don't know. But it's frustrating to wake up exhausted, and then when I don't let myself rest during the day, that's even more frustrating. I have to say, hey, it's okay. You got 4 hours of sleep. It's okay to take a nap. You don't have to be productive, because you're more productive after you take a nap, actually. and I think that's what's humanizing, is that all of us are different. To expect that we're going to all get 8 hours of sleep and then do 10, 12 hours of work and then somehow be happy, productive citizens is just BS. It is, and to use Tricia Hersey's words, it is. It's not sustainable. And so in this culture of overwork, the first place we start is with ourselves. Like if you notice yourself saying, I'm not good enough because I didn't make my house completely clean. You're fine. Do it later. Take a nap. Watch TV, be kind to yourself. And I think that's a lot of it, is that negative self-talk, is that we have to have things perfect. We have to live in this productive Protestant work ethic world. And I think there's something to be proud of when we accomplish things. It's not that work is bad. It's just that we don't need to overwork. We need to have lives outside of our jobs. I remember some people during the pandemic going, what's a hobby? I don't know. And people started baking bread and doing things at home and noticing that they had things in their home that they hadn't touched in years. And going, what is this? I'm reading a book. so I think there is certainly a resistance after the at-home time of the pandemic when you have the quiet resignation in some companies, or they're just like, I'm not going to work so many hours. I am going to work from home. I'm not going to come into your sterile office with annoying lights and sit in a cubicle and be a machine. And I think that's powerful. We're seeing now that labor is asking for more. It's becoming more okay for labor unions and people to say, hey, we're human. We're not just cogs in your wheel. So when we think about when we were little, this may sound familiar. Rock-a-bye, baby, on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come baby, cradle and all. That is not very restful. Not very restful. And then I just want to say, what? Why would you sing this ominous song to children to encourage them to sleep? Or can we look at fairy tales? Can we look at the Big Bad Wolf and all these fairy tales? And have you ever thought about the lyrics to this legendary lullaby? You're in a cradle way up high in a tree on a windy day. Who thought that was a good idea? And then the branch breaks and the cradle falls to the ground. And could you even survive that? I don't know. There are several theories about that song. And it was a popular lullaby printed in 1765 and Mother Goose's Melody. Some historians thought that it was a response to King James' conversion to Catholicism. He had a son, and many feared that his heir would lead to a Catholic dynasty in England. Whatever the reason, why do we keep singing it? I don't know. It's a lovely melody, but it makes me think, what about the words? Do we keep perpetuating generation to generation songs like this? It was about a king and fear of Catholicism, not about resting and loving our babies. And we've been very intentional in this congregation to think about the words that we use. We think about how we can be welcoming, how we can be broad in our understanding. And I think the same is true with how we teach our children. If we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like the only thing that they can be is a doctor. Or say, what are some of your passions? What are you interested in? And of course, many of us are careful not to say to a child, oh, you're so beautiful, and not also tell them how smart they are, and to watch out for gender and so many things. But in our culture, rest is, I think, on the slowing edge of that. We haven't caught up with this idea that rest is not laziness. Productivity is not a measure of our worth. And I think unwinding that is hard. It is really hard. I know for me as a woman, and just all the messages I got, I feel like I have to work that much harder. I feel like I have to prove myself and say, look, see, this is what I did. This is why I have a right to take up space here. And again, to use Tricia Hersey's word, no. We all have a right to take up space. In previous generations, rest was really considered a luxury. Being industrious was so that you could feed your family, so you could have roofs over your head, and that's still true in many places. And when I was growing up, I got mixed messages from my mom and dad on this. While I was expected to get a job as a teenager and work hard and go to college, there was also a value in rest time. My mom had this generosity of rest that I didn't think she got as a little girl. She would say to me in high school, why don't you take a mental health day? Stay home. I did. I would stay home and rest, and most of my friends would say, man, you got the best mom. My mom wouldn't do that. And it was really cool that she did that. She wasn't particularly fastidious or tidy, didn't constantly work at home. She never let me help much in the kitchen, and which I kind of regret, but she wanted me to have a childhood that was restful and not overscheduled. She loved that I could run in the woods and have free time to read and think. She was generous with taking me to the library so that I could read and have imagination time, versus calling reading or imagination or writing a waste of time. And maybe like some of you, she grew up in a performative environment. Her schedule was set each day: dance, Girl Scouts, church, and family gatherings. She was the crown jewel of my grandmother's proof that her marriage was good enough. So all the hopes rested on her. My grandmother came from this well-to-do family, but ended up eloping with a working class guy named Jug. And it was kept a secret for many years. And then when her darling daughter was born, unfortunately she wasn't able to have more children. And so the performance of that child proved to her family that everything was okay. This was her productivity as a woman of that time. I will keep a perfect house. I will go to church. I will be an exemplar of goodness. And my mom became the product of that. And so when she went, forget that, in the 70s, and said, I am a liberated woman, she went a little wild too. She said, hey, children, go live free. And so it's interesting, how generations upon generations, we pass down these messages. What is okay and what is not okay. And I hope that in today's society, we can pass on to ourselves and to others that leading a balanced life is good. Having time for your hobbies and not overworking until you're about to fall out. That burnout is okay and exhaustion is to be exalted is just not healthy. It's not healthy. My great-grandmother was also a woman who was interesting when I think about rest. My great-grandmother was married to someone who unfortunately had trouble with alcohol and addiction, and did not live past the 29 stock market crash. And so as a woman with 3 children, she had to pick up and support her family, but she never married again. She taught, she had a dress shop, and yet somehow in all of that, she was someone who did embrace rest. She played the violin. Whenever I visited her, she would sit down and we would write poetry, even though she said she was terrible at poetry. She would listen to me. And our topic this month is generosity. And one of the most generous things that you can give is your attention. And she was so kind to, I was a jabberjaw little kid, and great Grand Francis, and this, and she's like, okay, well, sit down, Julie. This is grand. We're gonna write a poem, and I would just kind of go, ooh, it was like a flower getting sunlight because she was giving me that time. And that is also rest. It's that attention, that beauty of being with someone that cares that you're there. And so when we think about the gift of giving rest to ourselves, we can think about, instead of asking, have I worked hard enough to deserve rest? Instead ask, have I rested enough to do my most loving and meaningful work? Those are the words of Nicole Jane Hobbs. And so when you find yourself powering through just one more thing, think about if you can give yourself just a moment in nature, a moment of breathing. When we heard Mystery and the Road Home, that connection with beauty and mysticism and mystery, that spiritual connection can also be a point of rest. Hopefully coming into this space can feel like rest sometimes, being with each other and singing. So I want you to imagine a river. Imagine a river in your mind. Feel free to close your eyes if you wish. And I'm going to read the words of Octavia Rahim. And when we think of a river, there's so many rivers. There's the Mississippi, the Colorado, some really lazy rivers. She says, "The gentle is powerful. I am looking at a river flow a steady, slow stream. There are heavy rocks anchored beneath the pulsing river. I lean forward to sense the depth and touch the movement of this moment. Up close, I see the rocks worn, clearly affected, transformed even by the ambling, unhurried dance of water, passing eternity after eternity over them. I look to the river to teach me a way to live, to exist, and to be." So if you find yourself busy or stressed, maybe think of that river this week or in days forward, that low, slow, lazy river. What would it be like to follow that flow, to slow your breath and ease your body? I'm going to close with these words by Tricia Hersey. "You are worthy of rest. We don't have to earn rest. Rest is not a luxury, a privilege, or a bonus we must wait for once we are burned out. I hear so many repeat the myth of rest being a privilege, and I understand the concept, yet I deeply disagree with it. Rest is not a privilege because our bodies are still our own, no matter what the systems teach us." Amen, and blessed be.